Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining this Aramaic word study. I just pray that you are finding it a blessing and that God's word can be just become refreshing and an excitement in your life as it has for me. That's my hope, is to share that, and that the real goal here is that we would see how beautiful the languages that God gave us, and that we can learn His heart and draw near unto Him and fall deeper in love with Him through His Word. So we are in Acts chapter 1, starting with the 5th verse. We've gotten through the other verses, and I want to share my screen now and show you some of these beautiful, beautiful things we're going to see. We're in the 5th verse, and the first word we see here is de Yuchanan. And those of you who have a Hebrew language background, Hebrew study background, will find that this is the word for the name of John, and it is a Hebrew word, and so this will take us into um, more of a Hebrew study of this word, because again, Aramaic and Hebrew are very much sister languages. I would roughly say it's maybe similar to Portuguese and Spanish, sharing a common um, base, but having just slightly different words and terminologies. So maybe that's not a good explanation, but it does help me sometimes to put that into perspective. And so with that thought, you can take the Aramaic word that you find and even research it in the Hebrew. And again, we're not trying to do this as a scholarly exercise. We're doing this for personal fulfillment and enrichment, to just draw closer to God, to love Him more. And the beauty of these words really help us to do that. And so you're going to see this word, Dayuchanan, has the dalet in front, which is a preposition, and it means of, talking about what Yuchanan or John, and this would be John the Baptizer, John the Baptist, the forerunner of Jesus, compared to Elijah, as Jesus would later explain to his disciples that this was, he came in the power and spirit of Elijah. And so we're going to unpack this word here because it's pretty fantastic. We're going to take a look at what Yastros has to say. I'm going to go to the hot link here and open up this word for John. It gives us the root. Someone asked me this morning just for a little bit of clarification on the root system. Hebrew, I'll start with Hebrew first. Most Hebrew scholars will teach that every Hebrew word has a root that's comprised of 3 consonants. And of course, then from there, they like to give it fancy names. So you'll see things like a trilateral root, triconsonantal root, um, uh, so many different names for this root. But basically, it goes down to that there are 3 letters that comprise the root of most Hebrew words. And so when you want to find the meaning of the word, you have to drill down. It's called parsing. You have to parse it down, take away the prefix and the suffix, which will be the indicators of the mood of the word, of who it's applied to, who's saying it, who it's directed towards. What is the inflection, and you take those away and you come to this triconsonantal, trilateral root. And so that's what you see here, that this root, and again, they have the root, but it's more than 3 letters. It has the yud, the vav, the chet, and a double nun. And of course, with a double nun, you can do a lot of word transforming with that, and take on a deeper study. We don't have time to get into that today, but I know there are some of you who are very much into that and love to do that. So this will be some good homework for you, is to take this word of Yukonon, because it breaks down into a word that you may be somewhat familiar with the chet and the noon, and that is Hanan, or to or assigned, very similar to the word of chesed. And so we're going to take a look at that and find that that is a beautiful understanding. Unfortunately, our you know lexicons don't go that deeply, so they just tell you it's a personal name. Well, that really tells you nothing as to what that meaning is, because remembering that in the Hebrew scriptures, as we find in Aramaic, every word has a meaning to it. Every name, excuse me, has a meaning to it. And so these names don't always necessarily reflect what their birth parents gave them, but it more reflects of what their roles were in the scriptures in the kingdom of God. So what we want to do is uh, take a look at Jastro's, because it is the Aramaic lexicon based upon extra biblical writings. And so you will find that when you start looking at these, the pages don't always correspond. Like here it says it's page 567. Well, when I start looking for the Yud, right away I see the Yud, I see a Chet or a Hey, and it's a little hard to see. Sometimes they're always challenging. You have to zoom in on them. But I find that the word I'm really looking for is on the, the next page. And so here we find where it talks about Yohanan, John, being this word. And again, it doesn't give us a whole lot here, but we want to take away some of these letters. And also we want to look on either side of the word in the lexicon, because the words are related. And what I find interesting, and get down to the bottom here, is this word Yohanan is really a name of a species of locusts. Now, those of you familiar with the New Testament writings realize that there's a very obscure description given to John the Baptist, that his lunch, if you will, was locusts and wild honey. So I found it really interesting to see that his name actually had a form of a name of a locust. And of course, there's studies that you can go into that, okay, did he really eat locust? Is it a metaphor? Is it something else? And you can pursue that on your own, but this gives you a little bit of a clue, a little bit of a tie-in of his name having the meaning of locust. Um, so Yastros really doesn't take us where we really want to go here. What I want to do is take a look at the Hebrew itself. And one of my favorite ones I go to is Wilhelm Gesenius. And so we're going to take a look at this word here and look at the Yud, um, and then the Het. So we scroll down to find the Het. Okay. Oop, I went too far. Okay. Here we are. So it's a little hard to see. So we get to this one here, and we start looking at the Yod, the Het, and then we have to go back to the Nun. Here we have the Mem and the Pei. And what we're going to find is that we don't really see anything in the Yud and the with the Yud in front. And here we begin to have to unpack the word to get deeper in the root. The Yud is always s- uh, somewhat of a signifier of the presence of God. And so we have to maybe pull that part away and take a look at um, the het and see what it looks like when we get to the het and then the noon. And what I found when I was going through this is it's tied to, um, let's see, here we go. And we're looking for het, noon. And it says merciful, and it's somewhat of an abbreviation, but it's an abbreviation of God giving, of Jehovah, excuse me, Yahweh giving. They use Jehovah here, but I prefer to use the term Yahweh, of Yahweh giving, Yahweh being merciful, and that it is the word Chesed, and so the Yud in front of it, adds to me an extra emphasis on that this is God that is being merciful. God is bestowing mercy through the humanity through John, and so it's in his name that we see the mercies of God coming through. So again, just a beautiful, beautiful word study here. The next word I want to look at, and we're only going to have time to do two words here today just because there is so much there. And I really spent a lot of time on this word. This is, when you do these classes, you're supposed to come across as knowing everything and providing all the answers, and all the students go, "Woo, you're so smart." But this is I try not to do that, because the more I do this study, the more I feel inadequate and humbled, and I surely came across that when I get to this word "amade," that is sometimes is translated as baptized. I prefer the word immerse because I feel it's a truer um, root to the meaning of what was being done back then, where the term baptism today has become somewhat cloudy in its understanding, depending upon what your religious history and background is. And so I want to go a little level deeper as to this meaning. And this word "amade" means to sink. And of course, one of the challenges in Christianity is, okay, how should baptism be done? Some do not immerse, others do immerse, and we're not here to solve that debate right now, or even enter into it. We're here to look at the scriptures, and we do find here that this word that's being used gives the impression that it's sinking, that it's submerging oneself. It's also tied to the idea of the sun setting in the water, on the horizon, obviously not in the water, but as we watch a sunset and we see the sun dip down and disappear beneath the horizon of the water, this word "amade" is tied into it. And this, all made sense as I looked into the Payne Smith. It talked into this reference of the sun plunging into the sea as they knew it. Gesenius, if we take a look at it, this is where it became interesting, is because those who have a Hebrew background will know that the word "amad" means to stand. And so we look at this root here, and you see the ayin, the mem, and the dalet, which is the same root word in Hebrew for amad, which means to stand firm. And so I was challenged here, saying, okay, this is so close in spelling to the Hebrew word, but yet the meanings are coming across completely different. Is there a connection? I believe there was one, but I struggled really to find it. And so I'm going to leave you with kind of a half-finished study and commentary here, and hope that you'll take a little bit of time to pursue it, and maybe you'll come up with a response, and you can please share that with me, and then I can share it with the whole class. But as we looked into Yastros and looked at this word "amad," of course, it shows up here. It seems to stand, to rise up, to remain, to endure, to be ready. Okay, well, how does that correlate to immersion and going in under the water? And so that's where this became quite a study, and I spent a lot of time on this, and really didn't get to a place to where I felt that I could share and feel like I've, you know, found everything I need to find for this word and exhausted every resource. So I just wanted to humbly give this to you and say, here's as far as I've gotten. Maybe one of you will have something that speaks to them. It even talks about what I liked was to change the standing of, to enlarge, to reduce. Of course, what was immersion as part of this ritual all about? You are changing the standing of your spiritual position. And again, I know this opens up theological debates, and but again, just trying to show some of the meanings of the words here as to what happens. And the groups that will believe that this is tied into being born again of the water and of the spirit, which is a change of standing, which is a change in your life. You're becoming part of the new birth, and being immersed in water is the fulfillment of being born of the spirit. Excuse me, born of the water. And so it does have some of these connotations in these meanings here. To rise up. It doesn't also mean to stand, it means to arise. Um, Baptism by immersion, you go down into the water, you rise up out of the water. Is that a fair connection? I don't know. I'm struggling to make that connection, but obviously it occurred because in the Aramaic, which may have even preceded the Hebrew in this case, according to some scholars, this word "amed" would have been used for immersing, for sinking. And again, is it a sinking that you sink never to arise, or is it intended to be a sink and go down, and then you arise after, which is where the word amad could have been brought into? Also in Gesenius, this word amad has a reference to being covered in the Syriac background, which again, that ties into what's happening when you are immersed. You are being covered by the water. You're going down into it. And so, again, just beautiful, beautiful references. Um, it is our privilege, I guess, to take whatever spiritual background you have, and how it's something called confirmational bias. It means you see things the way you understand them, and you apply that knowledge that you have to uh, gain an understanding of that word. So we are all somewhat guilty of it, and we can't really get away from it, that we will look at verses and filter them and apply our understanding based upon what we believe to interpret them. Not saying that's right or wrong. I know I'm always challenged to try to find what I feel is a true meaning without entering into my own religious biasness and religious background and teachings. And of course, it's hard for me, as I'm sure it's hard for each and every one of us. But I want to leave that with you today. Pray that you'll do a study on your own. I'm going to attach a document to the email, which is very fascinating. It researches and has researched back to the origin of infant baptism being tied to a pandemic that killed millions and millions of people back at the turn of the millennium, and how they feel that there was a connection between the two. So I hope you enjoy that. May God bless you, and I pray that you just have a wonderful rest of your day, and remember to fulfill the Vahavta, to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Bye-bye.